Welcome to Harmonic Expressions, your body and soul podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lianna Hunt. Today I'll be sharing with you an interview I had recently. Let's get started. Welcome back to Harmonic Expressions, the podcast. I'm excited because I have a very special guest that I met very recently too. I have Kaity Carlson with me today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I want to go into, and we just decided this, we want to share about how we met, because I would say it was like a serendipity, like synchronistic type of meeting. There is a cafe on Oahu called Morning Brew, and I love it because it's a really big space, but that's also a lot of people. There's a lot of food options. The coffee's great. And I started going there, and randomly, I don't know, I think you were sitting there first, and then maybe I sat next to you. I'm not sure like who was there first. I think that's how it was.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you asked me about my book that I was reading or vice versa, or somehow we got talking. And then I come to find out that you work with women on their cycles and really coming off of birth control. And then it went even deeper into how the gut plays into all of that. And I was so fascinated because I'm very big on all of that. And I was like, wow, another holistic practitioner plus a yogi at the yoga studio that I wanted to start at, which I started going to, which was great. So I'm so excited that you're on here today because I think you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share through your own experiences, but also, how you're helping other clients as well. So first I want to ask you like how you got into this, because I'm not even sure if I even asked you the first time that we met that question.
Yeah. And thank you for the intro. Yes, it was definitely a meant to be moment. So I'm forever grateful that we crossed paths and met in the way that we did, or just period. But the way that I got started in all this, honestly, it's kind of, I always say it happened before I really realized what I was being led to. For me, it all started from the gut health angle and just wanting to heal my gut, re-regulate my gut, and just a lot of processes happening inside me. But the way that I really stepped into cycle syncing was just in the last year and a half, and taking all of the information, lifestyle changes, habits, holistic health learnings, and applying them to my monthly cycle, which really just allowed me to fine tune all the things I had already been doing, and align my energy a little bit better. So it just came to me through other friends that are in this space and sharing this insight. And, I kind of just organically wove myself here. And that's where I really tried to marry, gut health with the understanding of cycle syncing and the importance of the menstrual cycle, wellness in general. But yeah, it was a little bit of like I didn't know where I was heading situation until I got here. And now I see it all, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally. And I think a lot of the times when we're meant to heal something or be a part of something we don't fully know, especially when we are healing, because healing is so complex and multidimensional that sometimes we're healing one area, which leads to another area. And I would say too, like healing my thyroid, I realized that my gut and then even bigger, my brain and my nervous system had such a huge impact. So it's like, yeah, that hindsight of, wow, if I could really help someone else, this is where I would actually start with them. And so if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your approach to focusing on the gut first, because I found that when I met you, I was like, whoa, like that's Ayurvedic, that's an Ayurvedic type of practice or kind of way of looking at things, is really addressing any condition from the gut first and then moving from there. So I would love to hear your input if you want to share personally, or you can share like what you started to realize when you're helping clients, like why this is so beneficial to start with the gut when you're working on syncing your cycle.
Yeah, no. I love this question. It honestly, for me, it really hit when I dove into all of this about 5 years ago. My journey began with coming off of birth control. I was reading the book called The Mind Gut Connection by Dr. Emmerin Mayer. Killer book. Can't recommend it enough. And within the first like 30 pages, he talks about how birth control affects your mind. All of that was news to me. But that was really where, I mean, I stopped taking the pill cold turkey and never took it again. So then I was just obsessed with learning about the gut. They call the gut your second brain. Our guts are so intelligent and do so much for us. But there's a lot, I think, that goes unspoken about how the gut impacts your mood, your decision-making processes, things that you wouldn't necessarily think. It's not just nutrition, it's not just digestion. It's really our center hub of wellness and just the foundation of where all other things kind of come from. So for me, I just really started to learn about how women are dysregulated, and how we can start to shift back to re-regulation. And it really all comes down to the gut, to supporting the gut as best you can through nutrition, movement, stress management, and sleep. Those are really the 4 bucket areas, and tend to be the 4 most common areas that I help women with. It's ironic that was kind of, those were the 4 areas that I had carved out to really dive into, yet those are also the 4 areas that women come to me needing some assistance with. So I don't think that that's actually coincidental. I think that that's, points to a lot of just our societal norms and the culture that we live in. But yeah, that's kind of my fascination with the gut. And yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. I I 100% agree with all of that. I think there's so much to it. I think I've even had someone tell me like your gut is like your holy grail. And it's been really interesting to work like in meditation type spaces too, and really
Mhm.
tapping into actually feeling into the gut, like really feeling into the digestive tract and
Oh
what is it
yeah.
really feeling like. And sometimes it's like I don't feel anything or
Sure.
maybe I hear some noises, but
Sure.
it's really it is amazing because the way that I look at it, it really does break down our whole life.
Mhm.
Um, and it rebuilds us or it creates diseases in other areas. Um,
Oh yeah.
so I know you have a program too, and I definitely want to touch into that a little bit more. When you
Of course.
work with clients, is there like a time frame of like we focus on the gut for 2 weeks and then the next 2 weeks is focused on the cycle, or like what does that process really look like when you start with the gut and then start to move in other directions, or nutrition, sleep, like other lifestyle habits too?
Sure. Yes. So my program is a 12-week program. With that comes 6 biweekly one-on-one sessions where we're really spending a lot of time together, dissecting and understanding your specific lifestyle and habits. So there's not really a time where I dive. It's honestly, they're also interwoven and kind of embedded in each other. The
Hmm.
gut is really the focus at the core of all the conversations.
Okay.
The very first session that we have together is a deep dive into your current life, habits around sleep, nutrition, movement, stress management, all of that good stuff. I do overview menstrual cycle awareness and just the 4 seasons that we all experience throughout the month, just so my ladies can already start to kind of keep tabs on which sex hormones are coming in and just identifying where they are in their cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I do provide a grocery list up front just so you can keep some tabs on what to eat, when to eat it, and just nourishing yourself along the way. But the
Hmm.
gut is something that we honestly kind of keep tabs on throughout the entirety of those 12 weeks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Certainly comes back up in all of the conversations that we have.
Hmm.
Now we can take the 4 final sessions we have together are deep dives into those 4 buckets I mentioned: sleep, stress, movement,
Mm.
nutrition, which again, gut is kind of the center of a lot of those pieces.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say there's a start and stop to the gut conversation. It's very much just
Hmm.
the root of
Hmm.
regulating and even tuning into your menstrual cycle.
Amazing. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's really important. The more I listen to like neuroscience and neuroscientists about like creating new habits, so which is all about creating a new cycle.
Yeah.
Mine has taken almost, well, I shouldn't say it took 4 years, but it took 4 years to get out of like bad symptoms and to have like a normal cycle. The normal
Mhm.
cycle actually happened within the first, I would say like 6 months at least, maybe even shorter, maybe even like a 3 month mark,
Wow.
where it really started to actually cycle up. And I did a lot of syncing with like the moon.
Yeah.
That was like, I was like, I need a force that's stronger than all of us
I
that
love
is
that.
going to affect all of us. So I'm like, let me do it
Yes.
with the moon. Um, However, when I look at neuroscience and some of the top people that are doing research and that I'm following right now, they're saying like that almost 21 to 63 days it takes to kind of create a new habit. And so I
Mm.
think it's really important. I love that you have it as an extended, longer program rather than like a month long, just because it is going to take time to develop something new, whether that is only gut, related, or if it is someone coming off of birth control. When
Right.
you take on clients, I know we somewhat discussed this, is it someone who is it really kind of anyone from they're still on birth control to someone that already has came off of it and they're not cycling properly? Or what's the like span of the clients that you work with or that you have found this program to be really helpful for?
Yeah, great question. As of right now, I've worked with women who are on birth control or have, some form of whether it's oral, IUD, folks that have been on it again, off it again, folks that are interested in coming off of it, the whole gamut. Um, so I've really honed in on just women that are in that fertile window. So still in that menstrual chapter of life, if
Mhm,
that makes sense, versus getting into
mhm,
the perimenopause or postmenopausal phases.
mhm,
Um, so yes, whether you are on birth control or not on birth control, I think cycle syncing could still benefit you. Of course, if you're on birth control, I tweak the program a little bit just because, like tracking ovulation, of course, you're not ovulating when you are on birth control. So just there's customized elements in that way.
mhm,
But all in all, our energy levels still really ebb and flow.
mhm.
And for my girls that are on birth control, I love what you said about the moon. I always tell them, if nothing else, like if you have no way of really tracking, always lean on the moon. Like our bodies are constantly trying to sync with the moon, which I love. I think that's the cutest thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, so to answer your question, yes, birth control or interested in coming off of it or never been on it.
Mhm.
Just to, tune into that physiological rhythm that is changing, ebbing, flowing month to month.
Amazing. Yeah. Uh, Let me just go over a few of my questions because we had quite a bit. Oh, yes. I was like, there are a few that I know I'm not asking that I need to ask. Um, what are common misconceptions about cycle syncing, and how do you address these with clients?
Yes. Thank you for this question. This is one of the questions I actually really lead with in some of the workshops that I host, because I hear them all the time. One of the biggest ones is that cycle syncing is only for women trying to get pregnant. Absolutely not.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
the opposite of trying to get pregnant is trying not to get pregnant. So no matter where you are in life on this topic, just awareness about what's happening in your body is huge, right? That's
Mhm,
power.
mhm,
Um, so that's a big one. I also hear that this is another thing to do, it's one more cost maybe or thing on the plate. Takes a lot of
mhm,
time, energy, money.
mhm,
Absolutely not. Like at the root of cycle syncing is just honoring how you feel, right?
mhm,
So there's so many different levels to which you can go down this journey. It can be as simple as just taking 10 to 30 seconds a day to just tune into where's your mind at? How does your body feel? Paying attention to everything from appetite levels to digestion patterns to sleep habits. Trust me, there's a whole world there. But it does not need to be this daunting, oh my God, I have to make time for this. I also follow that up with, if this is one more thing to do, one more thing to be aware of in your day to day, it's going to change all the other things that you do have to do. Mentally, it just gives you a different lens to understand yourself, and then therefore show up differently to all the things that are on our plates. What else? Last misconception. This is I get this one a lot, is that like what works for you won't work for me. It's not a one size fits all. This is, I mean, there's no absolutes in healthcare, as I think we're all starting to finally learn. So it's a lot of trial and error, just figuring out what works best for you. And I personally think that's the fun part. Just learning how to best nourish yourself, what you do and do not like. And sometimes that's a little bit more challenging than it sounds. Just really understanding, oh, I think I like this, but how does that affect my nervous system? Or like, does my gut actually like that? And just giving some time to play with that and experiment. So those are three of the biggest misconceptions I get about cycle syncing. But my message is always, if you are woman, cycle syncing is for you.
Yes, I love those because I think exactly, it can relate to anyone. And I think the biggest thing for me, I'm on a little bit more where I have more time right now, but sometimes things are crunched where you're like, I don't want to add another thing. But
Yeah.
I think for me, when I really started to do this, it really did change a lot of my connection to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came off of birth control. So I was reading more on your website, and from that book too, how it influences, like the pill or birth control can influence a lot of different things, including like decision making and such. And I think if we did take time to understand these things, and it's really understanding ourselves more as we grow and change, then we can start to create a life that does fit these things into our life more. So it's kind of like a mindset shift too, is like what
Yeah.
I'm hearing is like there's a lot, exactly. There can be a lot of misconceptions, but continue to ask those questions and be curious about it can
Yeah.
open up like a whole new world for that person, almost like what you experienced. And similar to like what I experienced. It's like ask the
Okay.
questions like what is this? What's going on? Like what am I feeling? Why am I feeling drawn to this? I think
Yeah.
that can be really important, just following that.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. This is another good one too. I wish we could have like sometimes when I meet people, I will say I wish I could like press record. Like, I mean, I
Ah,
could like in the
I know.
moment. So I'm like, that's the conversation. But
Totally.
those are definitely like moments where I'm like, okay, that person needs to be on here. And I want you to share a little bit more about someone who may be listening and maybe they don't know about cycle syncing,
Yeah.
um like they just don't know a lot of information even maybe about their cycle. Maybe they're younger and this just started and it feels very confusing. Maybe there's pain, maybe there's symptoms. Like how would you explain this in a really basic foundational manner for someone who's listening?
Yeah. So cycle syncing, just the practice of syncing your life with your menstrual cycle, a different way to kind of put that, um, is truly just understanding your body on a different level where you are tuned into the natural ebbs and flows of your energy throughout the month. Um, our hormones are, as women, change every single day. So I think just having some very high level awareness of what your body is going through allows you to meet yourself where you are, allows you to find some grace. I think this is stuff that we should be teaching to 12, 13-year olds in school. I certainly never learned in health class that within the menstrual cycle, you have 4 seasons. There are 4 different phases where you're going to feel drastically different. Your body's going to need different things. You're going to see the world differently. I think had we all learned that at the time that we were entering, puberty and getting our periods, we would have handled it very differently. So it gives me chills to actually, at all, the idea of speaking to a younger crowd or girls that are entering this fertile window of life, my heart goes out. Like, I wish that, you, me, all the women of our generation could have learned this way, way earlier on, because it's just absolute empowerment to understand yourself from that angle and just find some patience. And just like, meeting yourself where you are and falling in love with you in that way, you then do that for others in a different way. And it just increases your bond with other women. We seek to understand in such a different way. And just, the ripple effect is huge. But at the core of cycle syncing, it's really just aligning your lifestyle habits with where your body is, and just the natural energy that kind of comes and goes throughout the month.
Yeah, I love this. It's reminding me a lot too of someone that I met that also takes this to like another level of like doing business with their cycle. So
Mhm.
they really plan like business things. And then it makes me think like, yes, like what about like schooling? What if, things were, I mean, yes, like being taught, I think education is like power. It's, free information. Thankfully,
Yep.
there's technology. So hopefully there's a lot of women or, stepping into womanhood that really can access this information. But what if
Yep.
even like sports were set up differently? I mean, there's so many different things that I think we're starting to understand too, because I don't think there's a lot of good research out there either to like
Oh,
explain everything that we experience. So there's just so much to learn and like grow from in these topics. So thank you for
oh,
sharing
girl.
that. 'Cause that was, yeah.
No. Thank you for this podcast. And even just,
Yeah.
also being a woman in the space of sharing and advocating for women's health, that's a hot button topic right now. And it's crazy that it's
Yeah.
2024 and it's the first time that women's
Mhm.
health honestly matters. And I'm saying that from abroad,
Mhm.
obviously it matters, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have not been the ones, like medicines have not been tested on females. Sleep studies have
Mhm.
not been done on women. So all of this
Mhm.
knowledge about what's healthy,
Mhm.
what's not, it's all catered to men. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know if you watched the Olympics at all this year, but I tuned in more so because I was curious to hear. I mean, I think about Olympic
Mhm.
athletes and how they train like crazy, can't even fathom. But I
Mhm.
did notice a lot of menstrual cycle comments and Olympic athletes commenting on how they do cater their training or in just to
Oh,
where they are in their
amazing.
menstrual cycle and bringing some of that awareness in. I have also seen little tidbits here and there of collegiate athletes doing the same.
Good.
It would be magical for schooling, middle school, high school to also take into
Yeah.
account women
Mhm.
are not the same as the boys in school. Um,
Mhm.
that's a touchy one. I'm sure that that's a bit of a longer play before something maybe changes on that front, but
Yeah.
um, the awareness is growing. So I have faith
Yeah.
someday that'll look differently for sure.
Yeah. This was probably the first Olympics that I did not fully watch. It was, I was a gymnast, so obviously I'm geared towards gymnastics. So I
Yeah.
touched on the highlights of there, but from that, I did not actually sit down and like watch much about it. But that's amazing that that's coming out because that just means that there
Mhm.
is awareness. It's just
Mhm.
with high end athletes. So we need to bring it down to the
Exactly.
general population
Exactly.
where, a lot of people can have access to that information. So that's where like you come in and we can share this information with people.
Yes,
So
100%.
my one of my last questions, which I'm curious to know, is what tools or apps would you recommend for menstrual cycle like tracking or just cycle syncing in general that you either use personally or like with your clients that you recommend?
Yeah. So this is one that I do cover in my program. I have a little list of apps that you can check out. I know Flow is a big one. Personally, I am someone who's trying to be off of my phone more. So an app to me does feel a little bit like just another phone element, hanging over my head.
Mhm.
So I'm big on a moon journal. Moon journal is what I call it. It can
Mm.
be any kind of journal, like any kind of notebook.
Mhm.
but just manually tracking. I absolutely love starting my
Mhm.
day by noting what day of the month I'm on. Um,
Mhm.
this doesn't need to be more than simply that day 14,
Mhm.
day
Mhm.
7. If you would like to pay attention, you can obviously note as much as you'd like. Slept really
Mhm.
well, feeling hungry, not feeling hungry, whatever it might
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
But my biggest recommendation is always a moon journal and just tracking it manually for yourself. I also think that that helps to cultivate this connection with yourself,
Mhm.
and to each their own. An app, you might totally connect with that app and love the app, and the apps are all aesthetically cute and whatnot. But again, the technology piece for me is just a little bit of a barrier there.
Mhm.
So a moon journal, the app, and then to your point earlier, the moon. If you don't, want to track
Mhm.
like that, just pay attention to the
Mhm.
moon.
Mhm.
You're typically women are either synced up with the new moon or the full moon,
Mhm.
full moon, meaning that you will either bleed with the new moon, bleed with the full moon, and then you'll ovulate with the opposite. So
Mhm.
personally, I right now bleed with the new moon, ovulate with the full moon, which I love because I feel like a werewolf. But that's an easy way to just kind of pay attention to where you are. Notice the moon in the sky, notice the size of it, notice
Mhm.
your energy levels. Um,
Mhm.
Notice when your period is. So those are 3 easy ways to tune into tracking. Um,
Mhm.
Always day 1 is first day of your bleed. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I would love to start this. Um, when as soon as your next period comes, that's day 1. So start counting right there. If you are no longer in your menstrual phase of life and you don't have a period anymore, you still have a hormonal cycle. And my best advice is to align with the moon. You can just kind of pick a day and start right there, start counting, but just pay attention and tune in to just your own ebbs and flows, how your mind kind of shifts, how your energy shifts. Um, and take it day by day.
I love that. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, one of my favorite apps that I use now is the health app that's just a part of like the Apple iPhone.
Okay.
Um, and
Okay.
and they you can track on there and I track symptoms
Cool.
that come up. I haven't fully
Mm.
went back to see like symptom changes, but that's been really easy for me now that I'm like more synced with the moon. But like usually during the month I'm like, wait, when is it? What moon is it? Like where am I at?
Totally. Oh
Because
yeah.
sometimes it gets going and you're like, oh yeah, okay, the moon's coming up. That means this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I have to prepare for that. So it's nice to work with the moon because it's such a strong constant in our life. It's just,
Mm.
the sun, it's like the sun
Yeah.
rises and sets and it changes and fluctuates, which is good. But, it's still that very strong constant that's going to, I think, guide people out of maybe what they're experiencing or at least change a lot of physiology potentially quicker. I'm not
Oh,
sure if that's
absolutely.
even a thing, but
No, absolutely. And I think it's one of those like we are nature, right? The moon
exactly.
is there's something there that's just an innate
Hmm.
excitement and kind of love. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
ever heard that men are the sun, women are the moon. Men have
Hmm.
a 24-hour hormonal cycle. That follows the sun. The sun rises and sets every 24 hours. We are the moon. We've got a 28 to 32-day cycle, just like the moon does. Um,
Hmm.
so I always get a little giggly, a little giddy when I see the moon,
Uh-huh.
because she is us, we are her.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that connection to nature also kind of brings this whole practice to life a little bit as you connect with yourself. You
Hmm.
might see the world differently. You might be a little bit more drawn to the moon or to other aspects
Hmm.
of nature, whatever that looks like for you. But yeah, I think that that's just precious. I love that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on here today. Uh,
Absolutely.
Before we end everything, I know you have a website, you have 2 Instagrams, so I definitely want to be able to link those. Is there anything else that you see as valuable for someone that's listening about your program or how you could help them? Or any other links that you would like to have in the
Yeah.
description?
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for just the opportunity to be here and sharing your space with me. the honor is all mine. Anyone interested in additional information or even just following along in my own journey, Conscious Cycles Club is my Instagram page where I share all things menstrual cycle awareness, cycle syncing, gut health education. And then my link for my website and my program is in that Instagram bio directly. You can also email me at consciouscyclesclub@gmail. But feel free to reach out on any of the above. As far as, last words of wisdom for anyone interested in cycle syncing, I mean, I always tell my girls, give yourself some grace. Like, this is not supposed to be something that we're white knuckle gripping, or like you can't do this right or wrong. Trying to get out of that headspace. It's not something else that you're supposed to tackle and either succeed or fail at, right? This is just about understanding you and making life easier, giving yourself permission to say no, to rest, to do all these things that us women aren't often encouraged to do for ourselves. So whether or not cycle syncing is ever something you're going to really deep dive into, that's my message. Just remind yourself you're woman. That alone is so powerful, but we ebb, we flow. Every single day our brains are morphing, right? Our sex hormones are shifting. So just allow that beautiful process to happen and embrace it.
Thank you, Kaity, for being on the podcast today. It was so great to learn more about women's cycles as well as cycle syncing. If you'd like to connect with Kaity, please look at the description below for many different ways to stay connected. Subscribe, like, and share this podcast if you enjoyed it or found it helpful. Otherwise, until next time, keep expressing you.